This is a production about the T-28 Super Heavy and the type of gun that was mounted on her. It's a very specific data. Despite the demise of the unwieldy M6A2E1, the Ordnance Department still felt the need for a real blockbuster for use in the final push across Europe. In the spring of 1945, the Pacific Car and Foundry Company began work on this 95-ton, double-tracked, heavily skirted behemoth, which was initially designated as the T-28 heavy tank, and later as the T-95 gun motor carriage. The early goal was to build 5 pilot models and perhaps an eventual total of 25 of the giants. 25 of these. However, the closeout of the war resulted in only 2 being constructed. Both were sent to Aberdeen initially in December 1945 and January 1946, but one vehicle was subsequently sent to Fort Knox, where this photograph was taken, and then on to Yuma, Arizona for bridge tests. The gun was a 105mm T5E1 and a T40 mount in the front of the hull. The T5E1 was a very powerful weapon which achieved good results against concrete. Muzzle velocities up to 3,700 feet per second were recorded for what I have here is HVAP, which means high velocity armor piercing rounds, and I've also seen it as hyper velocity armor piercing rounds, so you can take your pick. The range was as much as 20,750 yards, almost 12 miles. A crew of 4 operated the T-28. Driver, gunner, loader, and commander. Incidentally, there's the commander terminal right here. That's his head right there, and he has like a 1930 style football helmet, and that's, you can see his chest here, and here's the ring mount of the hatch, 50 caliber I believe, and there's a big 3 right here designated upon the forecastle or superstructure side plate. An elevated ring mount for a caliber 50 machine gun surrounded the commander's hatch, but the weapon could only be used with the operator exposed. This caliber 50 was the only secondary armament on the T-28. So that's the gigantic gun. It's the T5E1 mounted in the T40 mount, 105mm, hyper velocity, and I like that muzzle sheath. That's extremely rare. That's a beauty. Here's my drawing. There's the gigantic phallus of the T5E1 gun. Now, I use that word not as a to be naughty, to describe a penis. I describe it as just the fact that it is a very large object in that shape, and definitely dominates the whole silhouette of the structure of the machine. T-28. Here's an example. T5E1 gun mounted in a T40 mount. See right there. And here's the double track component. Engine deck in the back. I'm not sure if I think the front is drive sprocket and the rear is idler. Some mock-up of the T-28, the gigantic gun. Now what I'm going to do is jump ahead to another part. This is about the Super Pershing. The T-26E1 was a designation given to the pilot models of an M26, which carried a 90mm main gun about 66 inches longer than the normal M3 T7, designated a T15. It used a much longer round and had a muzzle velocity between 3,200 and 3,700 feet per second versus the M3's velocity of 2,600 to 2,800 feet per second. Problems with handling the 50-inch long rounds inside the turret led to a T15E1 version of the gun, which accommodated a two-component round. A projectile which was inserted first, followed by the powder cartridge. The two early pilot models of the T-26E1 were built late in 1944, and they featured large externally mounted springs above the gun shield and turret front. The springs were part of the equilibrator system, which compensated for the extra length and weight of the gun barrel. The T-26E1 also had other modifications to compensate for the heavier gun: a counterweight at the rear of the turret bustle, a sturdier elevating assembly, and strengthened travel and turret ring locks. Combat weight of the T-26E1 was 96,000 pounds, and it was still powered by 4 GAF V8 of 1,100 cubic inches displacement and 500 horsepower, but the added weight reduced the speeds to 20-25 miles per hour on the road. So here's the Super Pershing. See, and here are those two enormous springs. Here's this class of gun that's similar to the T-28. This is a T15E1 gun. Hypervelocity, I'd say. And also the T-28 Super Heavy had the T5E1 gun, which is also hypervelocity. So the U.S. Army was like experimenting with these hyper powerful weapons, which were probably as heavy as the Dickens, in an active theater of war, the ETO. Now here is the more upgraded version of the Pershing. You have that gigantic gun, really good and long. The production model of the T-26E1, 25 were built, eliminated the exterior equilibrator springs by incorporating a hydro-pneumatic equilibrator inside the turret. 54 rounds of two-piece ammunition Let me give that to you again. 54 rounds of two-piece ammunition were accommodated. These rounds were clumsy to load, and this fact, combined with the approaching end of World War II, helped seal the fate of the T-26E1. General Motors Fisher Tank Arsenal built the T-26E1 with later production models using the double-pin T-80E1 track as shown on this vehicle. So here's a track, here's a gigantic gun, and here's my demo. So here's my T5E1, and I'm going to put a shell in the breech. She's in. Seal the breech. Fire the weapon. Goes. The shell is on its way to its target at a hypervelocity speed. And that has been a presentation about the gigantic American guns of World War II.